I am Hong Yue from the Department of Statistics, and this is my student number.
Hello everyone, I'm Wang Shuhan, and I'm from International Business. This is my student number.
Hello everyone, I'm Chen Manqi from the Department of International Business. This is my student number.
Hello, I'm Hong Yue. Now I'm going to talk about question 1. First, how can pandemic influence the aggregate demand in Taiwan? Explain your reasons. The demand curve will shift left because people stay at home more than before. Look is as same as the picture here. The AD1 will move to AD2. Question 2. Use appropriate models to analyze the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on Taiwan economic in short run and in long run. Graphical and descriptive analysis are required. In short term, it will shift left, as here. AD1 will move to AD2, and it will change rapidly. And in long term, it will shift right and getting better, but may not return to the previous one. Okay, I'm going to talk about the data. In theory, what should policymakers in Taiwan do in response to the shutdown economic relocation caused by COVID-19 pandemic? I suggest that to increase the government spending on money supplies. Okay, now I'm going to talk about question 4. Based on your research, what policies have been already implemented by Taiwanese authorities in response to COVID-19 pandemic? Our answer is, in response to the impact of the COVID-19, the Central Bank of Taiwan announced a rate reduction of 1 yard on March 19, 2020, the first time in 4 years. Now the question 5. Please choose one of these policies and use the macroeconomic knowledge to explain why the government implements such policy in response to the pandemic. The central bank announced that the interest rates will be reduction, and so by the macroeconomic we can know that the aggregate demand will rise. Hi, I'm Hong Yue. Now I'm going to talk about question 1. Please introduce more about the trade war between USA and China. The dispute has seen the US and China impose tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of one another's goods. US President Donald Trump has long accused China of unfair trading practices and intellectual property theft. In China, there is a perception that America is trying to curb its rise as a global economic power. Mr. Trump's tariff policy aims to encourage consumers to buy American products by making imported goods more expensive. China imposed retaliatory tariffs on imported goods from the USA.
Hello, I'm Wang Chuhan, and now I'm going to talk about the second question of the required question 2. Use appropriate models to analyze the simultaneous impacts of both tariff policy and capital flow on the following macroeconomic variables of U.S. economy: real interest rate, net capital outflow, real exchange rate, and net export. Graphical and descriptive analysis are required. Our team thinks that when the U.S. imposed tariff on imported goods from China. It reduces imports at X exchange rate and increases net export at X exchange rate. It follows that foreigners need more dollars at each exchange rate, so the demand for dollars in a foreign currency exchange market shifts to the right. Since there has been no change in the loanable funds market and no change in NFI, the final net export remains unchanged, and the real interest rate also stays the same. Thus, the import tariff reduces import, but the rise in the exchange value of the dollar offsets this effect by reducing exports, leaving the trade balance unchanged. To sum up, there are no significant macroeconomic effects beyond the increase in the exchange rate. In conclusion, our team thinks that real interest rate will remain unchanged, net capital outflow will equal to net export also remain unchanged, and the real exchange rate will increase.
Question 3. Use appropriate model to analyze the short-run impacts of both tariff and capital flow on the following macroeconomic variables of China economy: real GDP, overall price, and nominal exchange rate. Graphical and descriptive analysis are required. In the China-US trade war, the USA has gradually raised tariffs on imported products from China. Take raising tariff on exporting steel, for example. When the US raises tariff on steel imported from China, it will affect China's exports, which will decrease. As a result, the aggregate demand curve will shift left, and the quantity of real output will fall, causing a decrease in China's real GDP as well. However, China also raises tariffs on imported products from the US. Take raising tariff on importing soybean, for example. An increase in price of soybean caused by tariff will affect many industry and products, because soybean was produced as a commodity. Therefore, the short-run supply curve will shift left, causing an increase in price level, which means that the overall price in China will also increase. As I mentioned above, the USA has raised tariffs on imported products from China. At the same time, many foreign businesses have reduced investment in China. The decrease in export and capital inflow will shift the supply curve to the left in the foreign currency exchange market in China. Therefore, the price of US dollar will go up, and the Chinese yuan will depreciate.
I'm Hong Yue. Now I'm going to talk about question 4. Based on your analysis, do you agree with the belief of President Trump? Our answer is no. According to our analysis, the U.S. net export will be unchanged after imposing tariffs on imported goods from China. Therefore, the U.S. economy may not benefit from it.
Hello, I'm Wang Chuhan, and now I'm going to talk about the first question of required question 3. In the past decade, the quantitative easing policy was often used by the Fed in the United States. As a matter of fact, Japan and EU also engaged quantitative easing policies before. The first question: what is quantitative easing policy? What is the difference between quantitative easing policy and conventional monetary policy? First, quantitative easing policy. Quantitative easing is a form of unconventional monetary policy in which a central bank purchases longer-term securities from the open market in order to increase the money supply and encourage lending and investment. Buying these securities adds new money to the economy. It also serves to lower interest rates by bidding up fixed income securities. It also expands the central bank's balance sheet. When short-term interest rates are either at or approaching zero, the normal open market operations of a central bank, which target interest rates, are no longer effective. Instead, a central bank can target specified amounts of assets to purchase. Quantitative easing increases the money supply by purchasing assets with newly created bank reserves in order to provide banks with more liquidity. We can also use the graph to describe quantitative easing policy. First, central bank would create money, and then it purchase bonds from financial institutions. After that, it will reduce interest rate. So it will lead business and people borrow more money. And then they spend more and create jobs. At last, it will boost the economy. When it comes to the differences between quantitative easing and conventional monetary policy, conventional monetary policy is a set of instruments available to a central bank to control the money supply level. These include instruments that have been used by all central banks since their inception. Conventional monetary policy is structured around three axes: open market operations, standing facilities, and minimum reserves. While quantitative easing usually involves a country's central bank purchasing longer-term government bonds as well as other types of assets and increase the money supply.
I'm Hong. Now I'm going to talk about question 2. Please give one historical example to show how Fed used the QE policy in response to a crisis or event in the United States. In response to the global financial crisis in 2007, Fed responded with QE 3 times, which ended in October 2014 after 3 implementations.
Question 3. Use appropriate model to explain how the quantitative easing policy can solve the problem caused by the crisis or event mentioned in the answer of the second question. Graphical and descriptive analysis are required. When the U.S. Federal Reserve increases its purchase, it will shift the money supply curve in panel A to the right. Therefore, the interest rate will fall, reducing the cost of borrowing for investment. Also, the quantity of goods and services demanded at each price level increases, shifting the aggregate demand curve in panel B to the right. That's the reason why quantitative easing policy is used to spur economic activity. Optional question 2. In 2012, Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, proposed a so-called Abenomics in his second term in order to save Japanese economy from the long-lasting recession. Question 1. What is Abenomics? What are 3 arrows mentioned in Abenomics? Abenomics refers to the economic policies advocated by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who became Prime Minister of Japan for the second time when his party, the Liberal Democratic Party, won an overwhelming majority at the general election in December 2012. The economists outlined the program as a mix of reflection, government spending, and a growth strategy designed to jolt the economy out of suspended animation that has gripped for more than 2 decades. The three arrows are monetary easing, fiscal stimulus, and structural reforms. I'll introduce their specific policies and measures in the answer of the second question. Question 2. Use appropriate model to explain why Mr. Abe tried to use these arrows to save Japanese economy from the recession. The first arrow, monetary easing, consists of printing additional currency and implementing aggressive monetary easing to make Japanese exports more attractive and generate modest inflation. When the Bank of Japan buys long-term government bonds, it will shift the money supply curve to the right. Therefore, the interest rate will fall, reducing the cost of borrowing for investment. Also, the quantity of goods and services demanded at each price level increases, shifting the aggregate demand curve to the right. No matter the translation, the wording of the second arrow in Japanese, and therefore in English, is intentionally vague. The point is that the Japanese government is spending more to boost the Japanese economy. When the Japanese government purchases more, it will shift the aggregate demand curve to the right. Although we cannot be sure that the two effects, the multiplier and the parting out effect, which will be larger, it is possible that the actual rightward shift may be greater than we expected. The third arrow, structural reforms, is more complex. It contains various regulations to make Japanese industry more competitive and to encourage investment from the private sector. For example, there are policies such as lowering corporation tax, increasing the labor participation of women, more openness to foreigners in society, push to export Japanese goods, lowering of regulation and barriers. Next, I'll analyze the last one, lowering regulation and barriers graphically. Lowering regulation and barriers includes practicing free trade. Therefore, Japanese net exports will fall at exchange rate as imports increase, causing the demand for yen in the foreign currency exchange market to shift left, and the raw exchange rate falls, increasing net export to their original level. There's no change in trade balance, but a high volume of trade.
Hello, I'm Wang Chuhan, and now I'm going to talk about the optional question 3, the battle between Keynes and Hayek. First, I'm going to introduce both Keynes and Hayek and explain why they are important. First, I'm going to introduce John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes was a British economist whose idea fundamentally changed the theory and practice of macroeconomics and economic policy of government. So, why Keynes is important? First, he built on a greatly refined earlier work on the cause of business cycles, and was one of the most influential economists of the 20th century. Widely considered the founder of modern macroeconomics, his ideas are basis for the school of thought known as Keynesian economics, and its various offshoots. And now I'm going to introduce Friedrich Hayek. Friedrich August von Hayek was an Austrian-British economist and philosopher best known for his defense of classical liberalism. Hayek got the 1974 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics Science for his pioneering work in the theory of money and economic fluctuation and penetrating analysis of the interdependence of economic, social, and institutional phenomena. Hayek is really important because his account of how changing price communicates information that helps individuals coordinate their plans is widely regarded as an important achievement in economics, leading to his Nobel Prize. He is particularly famous for his defense of free market capitalism and is remembered as one of the greatest critics of the socialist consensus. The second question is that to summarize the arguments made by both Keynes and Hayek and point out their main differences in arguments. The Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics is an economic theory of total spending in the economy and its effects on output and inflation. Since market is imperfect and not self-sustaining, Keynes advocated for increased government expenditures and lower taxes to stimulate demand and pull the global economy out of the depression. Keynesian economics focuses on using active government policy to manage aggregate demand in order to address or prevent economic recessions. Activist, fiscal, and monetary policy are the primary tools recommended by Keynesian economists to manage the economy and fight unemployment. And here comes the Hayek theory. Most of Hayek's work from the 1920s through the 1930s was in Austrian theory of business cycles, capital theory, and monetary theory. Hayek thought that the major problem for any economy is how people's actions are coordinated. He noticed that, as Adam Smith had said, that the price system free market did a remarkable job for coordinating people's actions, even though that coordination was not part of anyone's intent. And the market was not designed by anyone but evolved slowly as the result of human actions. So that's why Hayek would say set it free in the rap. And in a business cycle theory, Hayek said busts were caused by bad central bank policy. If the bank lowered interest rates too much, credit would be too easy to get. And people would make bad business assumptions, and the hollowness of these would eventually be discovered, resulting in bust. And then I'm going to talk about the differences and argument between Keynes and Hayek. First, Keynes thought that government should steer the market, but Hayek thought that free market force is the best way for itself. While Keynes focused on the short run of economy, Hayek focused on the long run. The third difference is that Keynes thought that savings should be spent. However, Hayek thought that savings should be kept for the future. When Keynes supported boosting aggregate demand, Hayek didn't agree with him. For Keynes, individuals have animal spirit, but Hayek thought that individuals are rational, so they can decide what they going to do and what are they want to do. And Keynes thought that economic regulations are positive, but Hayek thought that economic regulations are negative. The last one, Keynes thought that bailouts are good for the market and the economy, but Hayek thought that bailouts are bad for it.